The courtroom smelled like burnt metal and something Dorothy couldn't quite identify. She stood in the center of a circular platform, surrounded by creatures that looked like giant praying mantises wearing armor. Her floral dress seemed absurdly out of place among all the sharp angles and cold surfaces. She clutched her knitting bag tighter and waited. The judge creature, bigger than the others and wearing more elaborate armor, made clicking sounds that her translator earpiece turned into words. Dorothy Walsh of Earth, you have violated Quarren territorial space. The penalty is death. Dorothy adjusted her glasses. Young man, I was on a passenger ship. The pilot took a wrong turn. The judge's antennae twitched. Ignorance is not innocence. You will be placed in the deep hold with our Ravager. It will be quick. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Dorothy looked around at the other aliens in attendance. Some covered their faces. Others made gestures she didn't understand but felt were prayers. A blob-like creature in the corner actually fainted. What's a Ravager? Dorothy asked. The judge leaned forward. A dragon from the Sulphur World Drakmore. 30 feet of scale, fong, and fire. It has consumed 43 condemned prisoners. Most survive less than an hour. Some only minutes. Dorothy thought about this. Does it get proper care? Medical attention? The judge stared at her. The whole courtroom went silent. Even the guards by the door seemed confused. It is a killing machine, the judge finally said. We feed it prisoners. That is all the care it requires. That's animal cruelty, Dorothy said firmly. You should be ashamed. The judge made a sound like rattling chains. Dorothy's translator said it meant laughter. Your soft species understands nothing of strength. Take her away. 2 guards, each 8 feet tall and covered in chitinous plates, gripped her arms. They weren't rough exactly, just firm. They led her through corridor after corridor, each one darker than the last. Other prisoners pressed against their cell bars to watch her pass. Dead human walking, one creature whispered. The Ravager will eat well tonight, another said at a third. Something with too many eyes simply said, I'm sorry. Dorothy noticed one of her guards seemed uncomfortable. His grip loosened slightly as they descended a ramp. Ma'am, the guard said quietly, I have seen the Ravager feed. Don't run. It excites the creature. Stand still, and it will be faster. That's kind of you, dear, Dorothy said. What's your name? Guard Captain Hess. Well, Captain Hess, I appreciate the advice. They reached a massive door covered in scratch marks. Some gouges were deeper than Dorothy's arm. The door opened slowly, revealing a dark pit below. A platform descended into the darkness on thick cables. You may bring your bag, Hess said. Not that it matters. Dorothy stepped onto the platform. Could I get some antiseptic and bandages sent down? And maybe some decent food? I suspect I'll need them. The judge had followed them down. You'll be dead before sunrise. We'll see about that, Dorothy said. The platform lurched and began descending. The last thing Dorothy saw before the darkness swallowed her was the judge's face pressed against a viewing window above. Other faces joined it. She counted at least 20 aliens gathering to watch her die. The platform descended for what felt like 10 minutes. The air grew warmer and smelled of smoke. Finally, with a grinding sound, the platform stopped. Dorothy stepped off onto rough stone. The platform immediately began rising back up, leaving her in near darkness. Her eyes adjusted slowly. The space was enormous. Dim bioluminescent fungi on the walls provided just enough light to see shapes. Bones littered the floor. Huge bones. Human-sized bones. The walls were scorched black in places. Dorothy heard breathing. Deep, rhythmic breathing like a giant bellows. Then she saw movement in the shadows. Something massive shifted position. 2 orange lights appeared in the darkness. Eyes. They were the size of dinner plates. The creature moved forward into the dim light. Dorothy had to tilt her head back to see all of it. The dragon was bigger than her barn back home. Its scales were black as coal and reflected the fungal light like oil. Its teeth were as long as her forearm. Its tail could have crushed a car. The dragon opened its mouth and roared. The sound hit Dorothy like a physical force. Her ears rang. Her chest vibrated. Small stones fell from the ceiling. The watching aliens above must have felt it through the viewing window. Dorothy didn't run. She didn't scream. She stood exactly where she was and studied the creature with the same expression she'd used to examine difficult livestock for 40 years. The dragon charged. Its claws tore gouges in the stone floor. Its mouth opened wide enough to swallow her whole. "Stop that right now," Dorothy said in her firmest voice. "Sit down before you hurt yourself worse." The dragon stopped. Its front claws skidded on the stone, bringing it to a halt just 20 feet from her. It tilted its massive head, clearly confused. "Pray didn't sound like that. Pray didn't stand still." Dorothy walked forward slowly. The dragon tracked her movement but didn't attack. She could see it better now in the fungal light. There were infected wounds on its sides. Its left rear leg favored the right when it shifted weight. Its scales were dull in places where they should shine. "Oh, you poor thing," Dorothy said. "They've been mistreating you, haven't they?" The dragon lowered its head slightly. Its orange eyes followed her as she circled around to examine its flank. She could see pus leaking from a wound behind its foreleg. "This is infected," she said, more to herself than the dragon. "You must be in terrible pain." She opened her knitting bag and pulled out a small first aid kit. She always carried one. You never knew when someone might need help. She pulled out antiseptic wipes and approached the wound. The dragon could have killed her instantly. Instead, it watched as Dorothy gently cleaned the infected area. She worked slowly, talking in a soft, steady voice the way she used to talk to frightened horses. "There now. I know it stings. You're being very brave. Good, dragon. Very good." Above them, pressed against the viewing window, the judge and guards stared in absolute silence. One guard made a religious gesture. Another simply stood with his mouth hanging open. Dorothy finished cleaning the wound and stepped back. "That's better. We'll need to do this daily until it heals properly. And you need better food than prisoners. When's the last time you had something nutritious?" The dragon made a sound somewhere between a growl and a rumble. Then, slowly, it lowered itself to the ground and laid its massive head on its front claws. It watched Dorothy with eyes that no longer looked quite so aggressive. Dorothy found a relatively clean spot, sat down, and pulled out her knitting. "Well," she said, "I suppose we should get acquainted. I am Dorothy. What should I call you?" The dragon blinked slowly. "How about Scorch? You look like a Scorch to me." In the viewing window above, the judge whispered, "What manner of creature is this human?" Nobody had an answer. Dorothy woke to the sound of dripping water. For a moment, she forgot where she was and thought she was back in her farmhouse. Then she felt the hard stone beneath her and remembered. She sat up slowly, her back protesting. Sleeping on rock at 68 was different than sleeping on rock at 20. Scorch lay curled around her like a massive scaly cat. The dragon had positioned itself to block the cold draft from the upper levels. Its body heat had kept her warm through the night. "Good morning," Dorothy said, patting the dragon's scales. "Thank you for keeping me warm." Scorch opened one orange eye and made a sound like a contented rumble. Dorothy stood and stretched. Her stomach growled. She'd missed dinner last night and breakfast this morning. Looking around the cavern in the dim light, she spotted the water source Scorch used. A small underground stream ran along one wall before disappearing into a crack in the floor. She walked over and examined it. The water looked clear. She cupped her hands and tasted it. Clean and cold. Good. She drank deeply and splashed some on her face. Near the water, she noticed movement. Small fish, pale and eyeless, swam in the stream. Cave fish. She'd read about them once. They were blind but nutritious. "Scorch," she called. "Come here, dear." The dragon rose and walked over, moving more easily than yesterday. The cleaning of its wound had helped already. Dorothy pointed at the fish. "Can you catch those?" Scorch looked at the water, then at Dorothy, clearly confused about what she wanted. Dorothy knelt and tried to catch a fish with her hands. Too slow. The fish darted away. She sat back and thought. Then she opened her knitting bag and pulled out her needles and strongest yarn. Over the next hour, she fashioned a simple fishing line. The needles served as a hook. She baited it with a scrap of dried jerky from her bag and lowered it into the water. Scorch watched with fascination as she caught 3 fish in quick succession. They were each about the size of her hand. Not much, but better than nothing. "Now, dear, I need you to do something for me, Dorothy said. She held up a fish. Can you heat this? Just enough to cook it? Not burn it. Scorch tilted its head. Dorothy pointed at the fish, then at Scorch's mouth. Fire. Small fire. Cook. The dragon seemed to understand. It opened its mouth slightly and breathed out a thin stream of flame. The fish in Dorothy's hand cooked in seconds. The smell was actually quite pleasant. Perfect, Dorothy said, smiling. You're a natural. She cooked the other 2 fish and shared one with Scorch. The dragon sniffed it curiously, then ate it in one bite. Dorothy ate hers slowly, savoring every bite. After breakfast, she examined Scorch's other wounds. There were 7 in total, all showing signs of neglect. Some looked like they came from weapons, others from fighting. She cleaned each one carefully, using up most of her antiseptic. They've been cruel to you, she said as she worked, keeping you hurt and angry so you'd kill prisoners. That's no way to treat any creature. Scorch remained perfectly still while she worked, though occasionally it would growl softly when she touched a particularly painful spot. I know, dear. I'm sorry. We'll get you healthy again. Above in the viewing window, the judge had returned with others. Dorothy recognized some species from yesterday's trial. They all stared down at her in disbelief. Dorothy waved at them. Hello up there. I could really use those bandages I asked for. And some soap. This place is filthy. The aliens looked at each other in confusion. Over the next 2 days, Dorothy established a routine. She woke at dawn, such as it was in the perpetually dim cavern. She fished for breakfast. She cleaned Scorch's wounds. She explored her prison, mapping its layout and resources. She found edible fungi growing in one corner. Not tasty, but nutritious. She found clay deposits that could be shaped and hardened. She found flat stones that could serve as plates and tools. Scorch followed her everywhere, watching with apparent interest as she worked. The dragon seemed fascinated by her constant activity that on the 3rd day, Dorothy began organizing. She cleared an area near the warmest wall and designated it as her sleeping space. She used her spare clothes to make a rough bed. She created a cooking area near the stream where Scorch could easily provide fire. She even established a waste disposal area in a far corner. Scorch helped without being asked. The dragon moved heavy stones Dorothy pointed at. It used controlled fire to dry clay vessels Dorothy shaped. It even learned to catch fish itself, dropping them in a pile for Dorothy to cook. You're a very smart dragon, Dorothy told it. They should never have locked you away like this. Dragons aren't meant to live in holes. On the 4th day, the judge sent guards down on the platform. For heavily armed Quarren soldiers descended, weapons ready. We're retrieving the human, the lead guard announced. Step onto the platform. Dorothy stood from her cooking fire. I'm quite comfortable here, thank you. That wasn't a request. The guards advanced. Scorch moved faster than anything that large should be able to move. The dragon placed itself between Dorothy and the guards, spread its wings to appear even larger, and roared. The guards stumbled backward. One fell off the platform entirely and had to scramble back on. They retreated quickly, the platform rising with them still shouting threats. Dorothy sighed. Scorch, that was a bit much. You scared them half to death. Scorch looked back at her and made a pleased, rumbling sound. Don't be smug, Dorothy said, but she was smiling to be by the end of the 1st week. Dorothy had transformed her corner of the cavern into something resembling a home. She had cooking utensils made from clay and stone. She had a comfortable sleeping area. She had a system for collecting and storing water. She had even started a small garden of edible fungi that Scorch's wounds were healing well. The dragon moved without pain now, and its scales were beginning to shine properly. More importantly, Scorch had stopped looking at Dorothy with suspicion and started looking at her with something that resembled affection. The viewing windows above were constantly crowded now. Word had spread through the prison and beyond. The human who tamed the Ravager. Aliens came from other cell blocks just to witness it. Dorothy paid them little attention. She was busy teaching Scorch to understand commands. Seat. Stay. Move this. Heat that. The dragon learned quickly, eager to please that on the 8th day. Dorothy looked up at the crowded viewing window and called out cheerfully, If you're going to keep me here, I really do need those cleaning supplies. And perhaps some seeds? I think I could grow vegetables down here with the right materials. The judge, watching from the window, felt a chill despite his armored exoskeleton. This wasn't how executions were supposed to work. 2 weeks had passed since Dorothy arrived in the deep hold. The judge stood in his private office, reading reports that made no sense. The human should be dead. Instead, she turned the execution chamber into something the xenobiologist report called a functioning homestead. There was a knock on his door. Enter, the judge said wearily. Guard Captain Hess stepped in. Sir, there's a xenobiologist requesting access to the deep hold. Dr. Fell from the Aquarian Research Institute. Another scientist who wants to gawk at the impossible. She wants to interview the human, study the methods. The judge considered this. Perhaps understanding how the human survived would help the Empire prevent future embarrassments. Approved. But she goes down at her own risk. An hour later, Dr. Fell stood on the platform as it descended into the deep hold. She was Aquarian, amphibious, with 4 arms and skin that shifted colors based on her emotions. Right now, her skin showed pale blue nervousness. The platform reached the bottom. Dr. Fell stepped off and looked around in amazement. The cavern looked nothing like the reports described. One corner had been converted into living quarters with organized storage. Another area had cooking equipment arranged neatly around a fire pit. A third section appeared to be a growing garden of fungi. And in the center of it all, an elderly human woman sat on a smooth stone, knitting something, while a massive dragon lay beside her like an oversized dog. Hello, dear, Dorothy called out. You must be the scientist Captain Hess mentioned. Come sit. I just made tea. Det fel uprostkoshesli. There. The human had somehow made tea in a death pit. Scorch watched the scientist, but didn't move from Dorothy's side. Don't mind Scorch, Dorothy said. He's protective but polite. See, do you? You look nervous. Dr. Fell sat on a stone Dorothy had apparently smoothed for visitors. She accepted a clay cup of something that smelled herbal. Her skin shifted to curious green. How? Dr. Fell asked simply. How what, dear? How did you survive? How did you tame the Ravager? How did you create all this? Dr. Fell gestured at the organized living space. Dorothy sipped her tea. I didn't tame Scorch. I helped him. There's a difference. I don't understand. Dorothy set down her cup. Tell me, Dr. Fell, how many predator species has your civilization domesticated? Domesticated? None. We domesticate herd animals for food and labor. Predators are too dangerous. Humans domesticated wolves, Dorothy said. Turned them into dogs. We domesticated wildcats. We've lived alongside creatures that could kill us for thousands of years. We learned that most aggressive creatures are just scared or in pain. Dr. Fell's skin flickered with orange confusion. But the Ravager killed 43 prisoners. Because he was tortured, Dorothy said firmly. Look at him now. His wounds are healing. He's well fed. He has companionship. He's not aggressive anymore because he's not suffering. Scorch, as if understanding, made a contented rumble and shifted closer to Dorothy. Your species does this regularly. Dr. Fell asked. Lives with predators? Back on Earth, I raised cattle, horses, and dogs. Ive handled aggressive bulls. Ive gentlet frightened horses. My neighbor kept bees. Another raised wolves for conservation. We understand that most creatures just want to be safe and comfortable. Dr. Fell made rapid notes on her data pad. This is remarkable. The galactic community has no framework for understanding this relationship type. That's because you see, everything is dangerous or safe, Dorothy said. You don't understand that dangerous things can become safe with proper care. Scorch isn't harmless. He could still kill me easily, but he won't because I treat him with respect and kindness. And the living arrangements? Dr. Fell gestured at the organized space. Dorothy shrugged. I grew up on a farm during hard times. You learn to make do with what's available. There's water, food, materials. I just organized them logically. Over the next hour, Dorothy explained her methods in detail. Routine and consistency. Meeting basic needs. Positive reinforcement. Patience. Simple concepts that apparently were revolutionary to galactic civilization. Dr. Fell's skin had shifted to excited yellow by the time she finished her notes. I must share this with the xenobiological community. Do you realize what this means? That you all should treat animals better. Dorothy suggested. That humans are far more complex than we understood. Your species has capabilities we never imagined. Dorothy poured more tea. We're just practical, dear. When you live on a farm, you can't afford to waste resources or make enemies of the creatures around you. You learn to work with what you have. Your world must be extraordinary. Earth? It's home. Bit rough in places. Nice in others. We have dangerous weather, dangerous animals, dangerous plants. You learn to adapt, or you don't survive. Dr. Fell's skin paled slightly. Your entire world is hostile. I wouldn't say hostile, just demanding. It makes you resourceful. Above in the viewing window, the crowd had grown even larger. News of the scientists' visit had spread. Aliens from across the sector had come to witness the phenomenon. Scorch suddenly lifted his head and growled softly. Dorothy noticed it immediately. "What's wrong, dear?" The dragon looked toward the upper levels. His body language shifted to alert. Doctor Fell, check her data pad. Oh no, there's a prison riot starting in the main complex. Distant alarms began blaring. Even from the deep hold, they could hear shouting and sounds of violence. The judge's face appeared on a communication screen mounted near the viewing window. His voice echoed through the cavern. "Human Dorothy, we have a situation. The prisoners have overwhelmed the guards. Fires are spreading. We're losing control." Dorothy stood and brushed off her dress. "And you want my help?" "Yes." The word clearly pained him. Dorothy looked at Dr. Fell, then at Scorch. The dragon stood, understanding that something was happening. "What caused the riot?" Dorothy asked. "Does it matter?" The judge snapped. "Yes, it matters very much. Riots don't start from nothing." There was a pause. Then the judge said quietly, "A guard beat a prisoner to death yesterday for talking back. Other prisoners witnessed it." Dorothy's expression hardened. "I see. So you want me to clean up the mess your cruelty created? We need order restored before prisoners escape or kill each other." Dorothy considered this. She looked at Scorch. "What do you think, dear? Should we help these people who locked us in a hole?" Scorch tilted his head and made a questioning sound. Dorothy sighed. "You're right. We can't let innocent prisoners suffer because their jailers are cruel." She looked up at the viewing window. "Lower the platform. We're coming up. But Judge, when this is over, we're going to have a serious discussion about how you run this facility." The judge nodded. "Agreed." Dr. Fell stood quickly. "I'm coming with you." Dorothy smiled. "Good. I'll need someone to take notes. This is about to become a lesson in proper creature management." The platform rose slowly with Dorothy, Scorch, and Dr. Fell aboard. As they ascended, the sounds of chaos grew louder. Screaming, breaking glass, the crackle of fire. They emerged into the main prison complex. Dorothy had never seen this level before. It was massive, with multiple tiers of cells built in a circle around a central area. Fires burned on at least 3 levels. Prisoners ran wild through the corridors. Guards huddled behind barricades, too afraid to intervene. Bodies lay on the floor. Some moving, some not. The air was thick with smoke. Scorch roared. The sound echoed through the entire complex like thunder. Everyone, prisoners and guards alike, stopped and looked. Dorothy stepped forward to the railing of the platform. "Listen to me," she called out in her firmest grandmother voice. The kind of voice that stopped grandchildren mid-tantrum. "This stops right now." A large reptilian prisoner below laughed. "Or what, old human? You'll knit us to death. Or Scorch will create fire breaks to contain the blazes, and I'll let him eat anyone who interferes. Your choice." The laughter stopped. Dorothy pointed at Scorch. "Dear, those fires. Can you create burns around them to stop them spreading? Don't hurt anyone, just control the fire." Scorch spread his wings and launched into the air. The prisoners scattered as the dragon flew over them. With precision Dorothy hadn't known he possessed, Scorch breathed controlled flames that created barriers around the burning areas, starving them of fuel to spread. Within minutes, the fires were contained. Scorch landed beside Dorothy again. "Good boy," Dorothy said, patting his scales. She turned her attention to the prisoners. Hundreds of them, dozens of species, all staring at her with mixtures of fear and awe. "Now then," Dorothy said, "who started this?" A brave or foolish prisoner stepped forward. He was humanoid, but covered in blue fur. "We did. All of us. We're tired of the abuse. The guard who killed someone yesterday." Surprised murmurs rippled through the crowd. "How do you know about that?" The blue-furred prisoner asked. "Because I asked. Violence like this doesn't come from nowhere. Tell me what happened." The prisoner glanced at his fellows, then spoke. "Guard Lieutenant Crossbeat Spinner to death for asking for medical care. We watched it happen. They threw Spinner's body in the waste disposal like trash." Dorothy felt anger rise in her chest. She turned to look at the judge. who had emerged from his office with armed escorts. "Is this true?" she demanded. The judge's antennae twitched nervously. "Lieutenant Cross has been disciplined." "Disciplined? A man is dead. Spinner was a prisoner. A thief. So that makes his life worthless." Dorothy's voice could have cut steel. "Every creature deserves basic dignity. I don't care what laws they broke." She turned back to the prisoners. "I understand your anger. I will be angry too. But burning down the prison won't bring your friend back. It will only get more of you killed." "Then what do we do?" the blue-furred prisoner asked. "They'll never listen to us." "They'll listen to me," Dorothy said, "because I have something they want." "What?" "Knowledge. They're afraid of what humans can do. They've watched me turn their execution monster into a companion. They're realizing they don't understand us at all. That fear gives me leverage." She walked toward the judge. Scorch followed, his presence making the guards step back nervously. "Here's what's going to happen," Dorothy said to the judge. "You're going to create a proper oversight system for this prison. Independent inspectors. Medical care for all prisoners. An end to casual violence from guards. And you're going to investigate every guard here to find out who else has been abusing their power." "I don't take orders from prisoners," the judge said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Then you'll take them from the galactic community." "Dr. Fell, are you recording this?" Dr. Fell held up her datapad. "Every word. And transmitting it live to the Xenobiological Institute, which is broadcasting it to their networks." The judge's antennae drooped. "You're streaming this?" "The galaxy is watching," Dr. Fell said. Her skin was excited yellow. They've been fascinated by Dorothy's story. Now they're seeing how the Quarren Empire treats prisoners. Dorothy smiled sweetly. "So, Judge, shall we discuss reforms? Or shall I tell Scorch to leave and let the prisoners finish their riot? I'm sure the galactic news networks would love to cover that story." The judge was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "What are your demands?" Dorothy listed them. Proper medical care, adequate food, an end to physical punishment, independent oversight, investigation of guard misconduct, compensation for families of prisoners killed by guards. The blue-furred prisoner listened in disbelief. "You're actually negotiating for us?" "Of course, dear. Someone has to stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves. Now, are you willing to return to your cells peacefully if these reforms are implemented?" The prisoners looked at each other. Slowly, they nodded. "We want proof," the blue-furred prisoner said. "Not just promises." "Dr. Fell will monitor compliance," Dorothy said. "She'll file regular reports with the galactic community. If the judge breaks his word, everyone will know." Dr. Fell's skin shifted to determined orange. "I accept this responsibility." The judge looked around at the watching cameras, the prisoners, the dragon, and an elderly human woman who had somehow taken control of his entire facility. He made a decision. "Agreed. Reforms will begin immediately. All prisoners return to cells for count and medical evaluation. Dr. Fell will have full access to monitor conditions." The prisoners began moving toward their cells, still wary but hopeful. The blue-furred prisoner approached Dorothy. "Why did you help us?" "You're a prisoner too." "Because it's right," Dorothy said simply. "I raised 6 children and managed a farm for 40 years. I learned that treating people with cruelty only makes them desperate. Treat them with dignity and they'll surprise you." Guard Captain Hess approached cautiously. "The human is wise. Perhaps we have much to learn." "You do," Dorothy agreed, starting with basic kindness. "It's not complicated." As order was restored, Dorothy sat on a bench with Scorch beside her. Prisoners passing by nodded respectfully. Guards watched her with new wariness. Dr. Fell sat beside her. "You just changed an entire sector's prison system in one afternoon." "I just pointed out the obvious," Dorothy said, "though I am rather tired now." "Scorch, dear, can we go back to our nice, quiet hole? All this excitement isn't good for a woman my age." Scorch made an agreeable rumble. Yes, they returned to the platform. The judge watched from his office window. His assistant stood beside him. "Sir," the assistant asked, "what is she?" The judge had no answer. 3 days after the riot, a new ship appeared in orbit around the prison station. It was smaller than the Quarren warships, but sleek and fast. The hull bore symbols that made the judge's blood run cold. "Earth Diplomatic Vessel." The communication came directly to his office. This is Ambassador Patricia Rodriguez of Earth. I'm here to discuss the unlawful imprisonment of Dorothy Walsh." The judge clicked his mandibles nervously. "The human violated our territorial space because your navigation beacon was transmitting incorrect coordinates. Our ships have the evidence. You imprisoned an innocent civilian and sentenced her to death. I'm here to bring her home." The judge looked at his assistant. "Prepare the human for release." But releasing Dorothy proved complicated. When guards arrived at the deep hold to collect her, they found her teaching Scorch to sort stones by size. The dragon had arranged them in neat piles while Dorothy praised his work. "Mrs. Walsh," the lead guard said, "you're being released. The Earth Ambassador is here." Dorothy looked up from her knitting. "That's nice, dear. Tell her I'll be along shortly." "Ma'am, she's demanding your immediate release." "Well, she'll have to wait until I finish this row. I don't leave knitting half done." The guard had no response to that. He waited while Dorothy calmly completed her knitting, then gathered her belongings. "Come along, Scorch," Dorothy said. "The creature stays here," the guard said quickly. "Absolutely not. You've mistreated him for years. I'm not leaving him to suffer again. We can't release a dangerous predator." Dorothy fixed the guard with a look that had made grown children apologize for things they hadn't even done yet. "Scorch is only dangerous when abused. Treat him well, and he's gentle as a lamb. But I'm not leaving without him." The guard reported this to the judge, who reported it to the ambassador. An hour later, Dorothy sat in the judge's office with Scorch lying beside her chair. Across the desk sat Ambassador Rodriguez, a stern woman in a formal uniform. "Mrs. Walsh," the ambassador said, "we've been searching for you for 3 weeks. Your family is very worried." "I'm sorry for the trouble," Dorothy said, "but I've been busy taming a dragon and starting a prison reform movement, I've heard." The ambassador's expression softened slightly. "You've become quite famous. Dr. Fell's reports have been broadcast across the galaxy. I just did what needed doing." The ambassador turned to the judge. "My government demands Mrs. Walsh's immediate release and compensation for her wrongful imprisonment." The judge's antennae drooped. "We acknowledge the navigation error. The human may go free." "And Scorch," Dorothy added. The judge shook his head. "The Ravager is Empire property. A dangerous weapon. He's a living being who deserves better treatment," Dorothy said firmly. The ambassador considered this. "Mrs. Walsh, perhaps we could arrange for the creature to be transferred to a sanctuary world, somewhere it can live freely but safely." Dorothy brightened. "A sanctuary? With open space and proper care. Earth maintains several interspecies sanctuaries. We could add one more resident." "Then I accept your offer, Ambassador." Dorothy looked at the judge. "But I have one more condition." "You're in no position to make demands," the judge started. "Actually, she is," the ambassador interrupted. "Mrs. Walsh has become a symbol. The galactic community is watching how this resolves. If the Quarren Empire wants to maintain diplomatic relations, I suggest you listen." The judge slumped in his chair. "What is your condition?" "I want to be hired as a consultant for prison reform. Not just here, but across your empire. I've seen how you treat prisoners. It's cruel and inefficient. Let me help you do better. You want us to pay you to criticize us. I want you to pay me to fix a broken system. Your prisoners riot because they're treated like animals. Your guard become cruel because there's no accountability. Change that, and you'll have fewer riots and happier facilities." Ambassador Rodriguez smiled slightly. "The human government would support this arrangement. Consider it part of our diplomatic package." The judge looked between the two human women. One young and diplomatic, one old and stubborn. Both absolutely terrifying in their own ways. "Fine," he said finally. "I agree to all terms. The human goes free. The Ravager goes to sanctuary. Mrs. Walsh serves as consultant." He paused. "Can I ask one question?" "Of course, dear," Dorothy said. "How did your species survive? Your world must be nightmare beyond imagination if it produces people like you." Dorothy smiled. "Earth isn't a nightmare. It's home. Yes, we have dangerous animals, harsh weather, and difficult terrain. But we learn to adapt. We learn to work with nature instead of against it. We domesticated predators, farmed difficult land, and built communities. It made us resourceful. Your entire species is like this. More or less. Some are tougher than others. But we all learn young that life is easier when you help each other and treat other creatures with respect. The judge made a note on his datapad. I will recommend to the High Council that humans be classified as cooperative deathworlders. Dangerous, but potentially valuable allies. That's very sensible, Dorothy said approvingly. The next day, Dorothy stood on a transport pad with Scorch beside her. Dr. Fell had come to say goodbye. Her skin was sad purple. I will miss our conversations, Dr. Fell said. You can visit the sanctuary anytime, Dorothy said. I'll be there managing the place. They need someone who understands difficult creatures. You've changed galactic society, Dr. Fell said. My research papers on human domestication techniques are being studied by every major university. Your methods are being implemented in prisons and animal facilities across 3 sectors. Good. That's very good. Ambassador Rodriguez joined them. Ready to go home, Mrs. Walsh. Almost. Dorothy turned to the judge, who stood nearby with Captain Hess. Remember what we discussed. Treat your prisoners like people. They'll surprise you. The judge nodded. I will remember. And Captain Hess will personally oversee reforms here. Hess stepped forward. It has been an honor knowing you, Mrs. Walsh. You taught us much. You're a good man, Captain. This place needs more like you. The transport engaged. Dorothy, Scorch, and the ambassador dissolved into light. Heading for the ship above, the judge watched them go. His assistant approached. Sir, what do we do now? We do as the humans said. The judge replied. We do better. In the cells below, prisoners heard the news. The demon grandmother was leaving, but her reforms would stay. For the first time in years, something like hope spread through the facility. The sanctuary world was called Haven, and Dorothy decided the name fit perfectly. Rolling hills covered in purple grass stretched to distant mountains. 3 suns hung in the sky, bathing everything in warm light. The air smelled clean and fresh. Scorch stood beside her on a hillside, wings spread wide, breathing deeply. The dragon hadn't been outside in 12 years. Dorothy watched with satisfaction as Scorch launched into the sky and flew in wide, joyful circles. Beautiful, isn't it? Ambassador Rodriguez said. She'd stayed to help Dorothy settle in. It's perfect, Dorothy agreed. Plenty of space, good climate, natural prey for the predators. Who manages this place? That would be you, actually. The sanctuary board hired you as director. You'll oversee care for all the rescued creatures here. Dorothy raised an eyebrow. Director? I'm just a farm woman. You're the only person in the galaxy who has successfully rehabilitated an apex predator through kindness. The board was unanimous. Over the next week, Dorothy met the other residents of Haven. There was Razor, a massive wolf-like creature from a frozen world. There was Shimmer, electric eel big as a bus. There was Cloud, a tentacled thing that floated in the atmosphere. All of them were predators. All had been rescued from abuse or exploitation. Dorothy treated each one the same way she'd treated Scorch. Patience, respect, meeting their basic needs, understanding their behavior. Within a month, Razor followed her on daily walks. Shimmer learned to generate power for the facility's equipment. Cloud played with the children who visited on educational tours. The galactic news networks couldn't get enough of it. Grandmother Tames Monsters was a popular headline. Scientists arrived weekly to study Dorothy's methods. Universities offered her teaching positions. The Quarren Empire hired her to train their prison staff. Dorothy politely declined most offers. She preferred working with the animals, but word of her success spread far beyond scientific circles. Military strategists took notice. If humans could turn enemies into allies through kindness, what did that mean for warfare? Diplomats reconsidered first contact protocols. If humans could communicate with apex predators, what other species might they befriend? Earth's status in the galactic community shifted dramatically. Requests for human ambassadors tripled. Invitations to trade negotiations multiplied. Several worlds asked specifically for human mediators in territorial disputes. The Galactic Council, the governing body of known space, invited Ambassador Rodriguez to speak. Dorothy was asked to attend as a witness. The council chamber was enormous, with representatives from 300 species. Dorothy felt very small in her floral dress, sitting in a chair designed for beings twice her size. Scorch lay beside her, calm despite the crowd. The council speaker, a crystalline being named Harmony, addressed the assembly. We gathered to discuss the human species and their place in our community. Recent events have challenged our understanding of this death world species. A insectoid representative stood. The humans are dangerous. They befriend predators. They survived a hostile world. They should be restricted to their home system. A gaseous being spoke next, its words translated from chemical signals. I disagree. The humans offer valuable skills. Their ability to mediate between aggressive species could prevent wars. The debate continued for an hour. Dorothy listened quietly, knitting a scarf. Scorch occasionally made rumbling sounds that Dorothy interpreted as boredom. Finally, Harmony called for Dorothy to speak. Mrs. Walsh, you are the catalyst for this discussion. What do humans want from the galactic community? Dorothy set down her knitting. Want? We just want to be good neighbors. We want to trade, learn, and help where we can. We're not looking to conquer or dominate. Yet you turn predators into weapons. The insectoid representative accused. I turn abused creatures into healthy ones. Dorothy corrected firmly. Scorch isn't a weapon. He's a friend. There's a difference. Your species domesticated wolves, another representative said. You bred them into hunting dogs. Va dogs. You weaponized friendship. Dorothy felt her temper rise. We gave wolves shelter, food, and purpose. They gave us loyalty and companionship. That's not weaponization. That's partnership. Harmony spoke gently. The council fears humans because we don't understand your ability to form bonds across species barriers. It seems almost like magic. It's not magic, Dorothy said. It's empathy. We learned long ago that life is easier when you help each other, whether that's other humans or dogs or horses or dragons. We look for common ground instead of differences. And if there is no common ground, someone asked, then you create it. Feed the hungry. Heal the sick. Protect the weak. Those are universal needs. Meet them and you build trust. The gaseous being spoke again. The humans offer a philosophy we lack. Most species focus on similarity. We trade with those like us. Ally with those similar to us. Humans seek connection regardless of similarity. Because we had to, Dorothy said. Our world was full of creatures different from us. Some are dangerous. We could fight them all or learn to live with some of them. We chose coexistence. Harmony glowed brighter, a sign of deep thought. I propose a new classification. Humans are not merely deathworlders. They are bridge builders. A species that connects across barriers others cannot cross. The council debated this. Finally, they voted. 247 in favor, 32 opposed, 21 abstaining. It is decided, Harmony announced. Humans are welcomed as full members of the galactic community. Their unique abilities will be respected and, when appropriate, requested. Dorothy nodded. Thank you. May I go home now? Scorch needs his dinner, and I have 3 other creatures to feed. Laughter echoed through the chamber. A very human sound coming from very alien beings that, on the journey back to Haven, Ambassador Rodriguez smiled at Dorothy. You realize you just changed galactic civilization. I just explained basic farm sense. Dorothy said, treat creatures well, and they'll treat you well. It's not complicated. For you, perhaps. For the rest of the galaxy, it's revolutionary. Back on Haven, Dorothy returned to her routine. Feeding animals, treating injuries, organizing living spaces, training volunteers. The work was hard but satisfying. Scorch flew free every day now, hunting in the mountains and returning each evening. The dragon would curl up beside Dorothy's cottage, and she would sit on his back, knitting while watching the sunset point one evening, as the 3 suns set in sequence, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Dorothy scratched Scorch behind his horns. You know what the funny thing is, she said to the dragon. They're all scared of humans. They think we're dangerous because we befriend predators. But we're not dangerous. We're just practical. Life's too short to make enemies when you could make friends instead. Scorch rumbled in agreement. Though I suppose, Dorothy continued, there is something a bit frightening about us. Not because we're strong or violent, but because we refuse to give up on anyone. We look at broken, angry creatures and see friends waiting to be made. That's probably terrifying to people who think in terms of threats and allies. The dragon laid his head in her lap, as gentle as a kitten despite being able to swallow her whole. But that's their problem, Dorothy said. We'll keep being ourselves, kind, stubborn, and determined to make the galaxy a better place, even if we have to drag everyone along with us. Far above, in orbit, military observers from a dozen species watched the sanctuary. They took notes on Dorothy's methods. They analyzed her success rate. They tried to understand how one elderly human had fundamentally changed their understanding of interspecies relations. They never quite figured out. Because the answer was simple, and simplicity often hides in plain sight. Dorothy Walsh wasn't special because she was strong or clever or powerful. She was special because she had something the galaxy had forgotten, that a grandmother's love applied equally to everything that breathed.